Hey everyone.
Hello everybody. How's everyone doing? Temperature check, yeah, good. Okay.
How are you doing, Jen?
I'm good.
You good?
Lots of travel. But
Yeah,
I'm
you've been
good.
traveling.
Yeah.
I was thinking this is, I'm really excited to do this talk. It's a really nice opportunity to share your work with everyone. And also on a personal level, I haven't seen you in like
I know.
9 months. So
I
like,
know. I could have had a baby by now.
yeah, that's true. So kind of, I'm seeing this like selfishly as a catch up with Jen as well, which is really nice. So you're doing good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna like tell you what the format for this will be like. So there's no surprises. We're gonna have a chat. We're gonna play some clips, and then at the end there'll be a Q&A. So let's start with the first clip, which is a reel of Jen's work, so you can just kind of get an overview of what she's about if you don't already know. So that's like the reel. I guess we should chat. We're going to chat through chronologically, which is kind of ironic because your favorite thing to do is kind of play with time, play with time signatures. So I thought your first work was on Vogue, but then I was doing a bit of reading, and you did an interview in between, like, since we've last seen each other. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but you made a work when you were 15, which was commissioned by Tate and BBC. And I mean, please explain what it's about, but it's some sort of alien landing story, is that right? Something very Afrofuturist.
Yeah, you know how it's always like that when you're younger, it's like super existential and you're just trying to like hold up the whole world and everything that you do. When I was 15, the Tate, along with the BBC, had this like summer scheme for young people. And the aim was to write, produce, direct, conceive of like an idea of anything we wanted to do. And it was just like a summer scheme. And so I had this idea called Alien, where it was like, what would it be like for an alien who came from outer space to experience like us, like experience the world on an elemental level, and also like just experience the human condition. It was very like artistically driven, like a super existential, super existential piece. And it was just like for practice. And BBC Two ended up showing it like late night one night on TV. So me and my dad like stayed up and we watched it, and I was like, whoa. It was the first time I was like,
crazy.
You know, you write something in your bedroom on your bed and then it's on TV. So it was like my first experience of, okay, like conceptually this is a thing that, you know, can happen, and is a thing that, you know, is real.
Did you know about Afrofuturism at the time? Was that? No.
And I think, to be honest, I think a lot of the things that I explore, or I was exploring at the time and even still exploring until today, I think very much like the term Afrofuturism, it's a retroactive term, you know, like, or retrospective term, in that people were making the works and then the term came about in 92, you know. So kind of like that maybe on some level was kind of parallel to that, where I was just expressing and doing what felt instinctively natural and first. And then I found out about the term later on in my readings. So, yeah.
Okay. And then you went to Howard and you did an MFA in filmmaking. I was wondering what other jobs and things you were kind of doing around that, because I just don't know. Like,
yeah, it was interesting. So my undergraduate degree was in law, so I went to City University and I got my LLB there. And then in my last semester, I had applied to go to Howard University in America, which is known as a HBCU, so a historically black college or university. But I also had applied for a summer scheme at Channel 4. Which essentially allowed for 9 young people to take up a position in 9 of the key areas of Channel 4, and I ended up in commissioning. So I worked in commissioning for the summer, and then they liked me, so they hired me full time. So I ended up working there for a year before going to Howard and going to film school in America. So that was my in-betweenish thing.
And then you made On Vogue in 2014, which we're going to play a clip from now. What I really like the way this film slows everything down. Like when I think of Vogue, when I've watched, like experienced Vogue balls, or when you watch clips of them, it's like fast-paced kind of parade, like a show of like flamboyance, really quick, and you kind of like slow it right down into like this lingering kind of glimpse on it. Yeah, was that the aim with it? Like, what were you trying to show by doing that?
I think with my work, like, I'm very much concerned with the interior of us and people. And I think oftentimes I'm very interested, for example, rather than just showing representation, but actually being able to get inside the world that I'm exploring in how it's actually unfolding as well. And something I'm very conscious of as well, particularly when photographing or dealing with Black stories particularly, I very much want to get into the psyche of that, you know, and I very much want to give that time and space. And then I say all these things, but also how I work is very instinctual, you know, so how it feels, how the music feels, how the people feel. I'm always reacting on some level to that. So with this piece particularly, it was my first kind of opportunity to create something very much in my visioning that was commissioned, you know, like on the level of Channel 4, for example. BBC was one thing, but that was almost like accidental, but this was intentionally like commissioned. And so it was a piece that I knew. It's so funny because at the time I think I pitched it in 2012. And it was really interesting because I remember saying, I want to do this piece that like celebrates the Black and Latino roots of like voguing and ballroom culture, like in Harlem. And people going like, what ballroom dancing? Or like, what are you talking about? And then 2013 rolled around and then more people knew about it. And then 2014 when it finally came out, people were like, yeah, we know what. Like,
it went like so mainstream.
Yeah, and now everybody knows.
Yeah.
What it is.
Do you know the roots of it, like potentially in prisons in New York? Did you know this? Like LGBT,
I didn't know that.
Black and Latino communities in prisons used to, like the small communities used to throw like Vogue balls as a way of like kind of connecting and also like settling disputes and stuff.
Interesting. Like I knew that people vogued in prison, but I didn't know of that being the origins. I remember
it might not be the sole origin, but it's definitely a root. Yeah.
Because I was thinking more so of. You know, they used to have mainstream white balls and the girls just they weren't allowed to compete. And so kind of ball culture kind of came out of that, you know, with people like Crystal LaBeija and stuff. So that's kind of like the understanding I know of it. But also you have Langston Hughes writing about like balls, like in the 1930s as well, in some of his writings that I've read that kind of allude to that too. So, yeah.
And this was, you worked with Arthur Jaffa on this film. He did cinematography on it. Could you like explain how that collaboration worked and how you kind of arrived on the same page, like visually, stylistically?
I mean, it's funny because it was me and Bradford Young who went in together to work on it. So these guys are like big brothers to me, and I said, you know, I'm making this film in New York. At the time, Bradford lived in New York, and I asked him on, and he said, yo, sis, if we're going to do this in 2 days, like, we need to bring another set of hands on. And so we were like, yo, AJ, do you want to join? So it is, you know, and AJ was like, cool, I'm down. So all of us kind of came together to make it, and naturally, AJ is now very, you know, he started off as he started off as an architect, and then he became a cinematographer, and now he's a, you know, fully fledged artist, you know, in his own right, and being celebrated the way he should be celebrated because he's incredible. But it was really as simple as, I mean, I wish I could give you a more like sexy story, but it was as simple as, yeah, we all we knew each other. We kind of had we all have the same kind of vibe. Like we vibe really well together, and we came on board and
like
made
organic.
It was organic. Yeah, we did it Labor Day weekend in 2013. So yeah, it was a cool time.
And one more question on it: if you were making this film now, would you do anything differently?
No.
You'd make it the same.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, let's play the next clip, which is a clip from Rebirth is Necessary.
You missed the best part.
You're gonna have to watch it. I think this is my favorite work of yours. I've heard you say, I don't know where, but I've heard you say that it best captures what's inside your mind. Is that a fair quote?
Yeah, it's my favorite work of mine because it's my most direct translation of my mind's eye. So it's the one piece I have in my roster that I had full control over, like 1,000,000%, like from beginning to end, sound, vision, everything. So it's it's my most honest, most truest, most direct like translation of my mind's eye. This is just how I remember when I made it and we had finished. I had just delivered it to Nowness, and I said to my sound mix, I was like, I think I've like ruined my career before I've begun. I was like, I hope people even understand this, because it was such a personal, therapeutic process for me. It was. It's very much my mind. So I felt very naked actually releasing that piece. But it's a piece that's affected, of all my works, that's affected people the most. Like I always say, like I brought it out in September 20th, 2017. And until this day, every single day since September 20th, 2017, including this morning, someone has either called me, texted me, DM'd me, emailed me, messaged me to tell me how it made them feel every day.
That's
since
amazing.
September 20th, 2017. So that's like, yeah. So I always talk about working, you know, and I think this piece is like my hardest working piece.
Yeah, and I think actually it's interesting you mentioned Nowness, and it was commissioned by Nowness. It was released online, and then what I find extremely interesting about the way that you've handled this project, because like it resonates so hard, you've actually flipped what people usually do, which is like physical distribution, and then it goes online and it's forgotten about, and you've like toured this thing continually as an art film and keep bringing it into spaces, which I really respect and think has worked.
Yeah, I think people have like really responded to it, and to your point too, you know, it's a piece that was on, you know, on September 20th, 2017, like it was online, but it's shown in galleries, it's shown, you know, in very much like grassroots organizing spaces, it's shown in most recently in the Sydney Opera House, like it's just shown in so many like expansive random spaces all over the world. So it's the best. I always say it's like such an honor to create, and then for people to receive the work on that level is like extra special.
I've always been curious about the title. I think because for me, time is such a big part of the film, and then the word rebirth, I just associate with Buddhism and like rebirth being a strong part of that, and I feel like that ties into the film. But I was then doing some more research, and is it right that it derives from a J Dilla track?
Yeah. So when I was making the film, I was thinking a lot about ideas of freedom and hope and necessity, and like what is required to get to those spaces. And then when I make films, I create musical playlists as well, and I'm a huge J Dilla fan. Like you'll see him in the credits of every film that I make, whether he's directly included in it or not, because he's just an incredible source of inspiration to me. And so this track kept coming up, and it's J Dilla's Rebirth is Necessary, and it's from a beat tape he had called The Rebirth of Detroit, and it's track number 13, lucky number 13. And it just kind of felt so right. It just kind of captured the essence of what it was I wanted to say, and it has the strength in the title itself as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if J Dilla made films that look like your films,
that's big.
I don't know.
That's generous. I don't know. He's the
just
master.
like the layering of samples, the like unquantized beats, the like journeying forwards and back. I don't. It feels when I saw that was the title, like that was where it was from. I was like, this completely fits. Could you talk about like time and memory and what role they play? Like, are they protagonists in your work, or how do you, without sounding pretentious, like what do you have like a philosophy of time or something like that?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm constantly trying to figure out how I'm constantly trying to, I mean, at least, okay, let me just boil it back down for a moment. Like when making film, I really want to give people as 5D an experience as possible. What I mean by that is I'm trying to create work that is absorbing and that is experiential, you know? And so I'm very much, when creating, I interrogate time a lot, you know? So I never will make something 5 minutes if I can say what I need to say in 30 seconds, you know? It will just have to be 30 seconds. And every single aspect of the film, whether sound, music, or vision, plays a role to forward the story. And if it doesn't satisfy doing that, it doesn't get included in my work. So when thinking about ideas of time and space as well, I have an obsession with wanting to see a lot more intergenerational conversations as well. So I'm constantly thinking about, I'm constantly dealing with the piety of like loss of stuff, you know? So I'm oftentimes in my work trying to reconnect past, present, and future, but also thinking about how each one of those can be each other as well, and trying to create work that almost like sits in its own time and space, you know? How do I create work that, or maybe on some level, can't be dated by looking at it?
Yeah, I find Rebirth really hard to date. If you look, I'm like, is it an artifact? Or
right,
yeah, it's got that quality to it.
So really thinking about those ideas. And then also, particularly for me, dealing with ideas of, I really do channel my dreams a lot. So oftentimes, like dreams I have make their way into my work, and thinking about ideas of like latent memory as well, or just, you know, things that I'm always thinking about, all these fragments that I'm picking up, whether it's through conversation, through reading, through dreams, through thinking, through philosophy, and thinking about how do I, on some level, pull these all together? How do I create some sense of understanding? It's also very kind of, even thinking about ideas of time and space, is very much a spiritual journey for me as well. What is, like we were just saying before everyone came in, like what is time, what is space? And so again, it's going back to this whole like feeling and rhythm of like creating in a world that is, or trying to create a space that speaks to how I see time and space, or how so many that I know see time and space as well, or experience time and space. And then also in cinema, particularly thinking about time and space, I'm very much, and I say like, you know, I make my film from a lens of an African filmmaker. So I'm often looking at ideas of African cinema, or the ideas or the functions of African cinema as a means to kind of, you know, allow my films to unfold. So yeah, it's very much for me, I'm very, very much concerned not just with showing the ideas that I'm presenting, but how do I also present the ideas in the truest way to the form of the pieces as well. That's something that's really important to me, yeah.
I think like another way I look at that film in particular from your like body of work is almost like, for me, it's almost like skipping down like a Wikipedia or like a YouTube kind of route or something. It's so like dense and like layered with lots of references. I was curious about the kind of research process that you go through to build something like that, and like not necessarily, like also just kind of like the rituals involved with it, and like what kind of personal things you do when you, because you must have like big playlists of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I always use music as an analogy as well. Like I used to, many years ago at this point now, I used to DJ. And it's the same kind of concept of like digging. So like when you're looking for a break in a record, you go through record, well, if you're a digger anyway, you'll go through record after record after record after record, and you'll listen to this track, and then you'll hear this break for a few seconds, and that's the break, you know? And it's the same thing for me with research. Like, I'm obsessed. Research is like one of my favorite parts of process. Like, I leave no stone unturned. Like, I'm obsessed, and people normally have to stop me, to be honest, when it comes to research, because they're like, whoa, it's just way too much, you know? But I love that process. And so what I'm also constantly trying to do is making these disparate links, or trying to find links that people haven't made before, or trying to open things up whereby it allows me to, or it just allows me to, like, for example, make links that people don't make. So, for example, in my most recent piece, Black to Techno, again, it takes a very, like, anthropological approach, but I had a journalist from Detroit talk about the fact that many people know that Detroit's like a big black hair like city. Like back in the 90s, people used to do like loads of hair shows and stuff like that. And so this journalist talks about how, like, you know, like when people would go out like to techno parties, there used to be like 24-hour salons. So like when you finish, and people are obsessed with hair in Detroit, so when you finish like at
Like after the club.
After the club, you go straight to get your hair done.
Post-rave, like hair.
Post-rave, like touch-up, you know? Like,
I'm into it.
and
Should
I'm
bring
so
that back.
into it, right?
That's what we need.
But like, you know, links like that, you know, wouldn't typically like be brought to light. I like to kind of make those connections to kind of help, because I feel like oftentimes, you know, nothing comes from nowhere. You know, there's always a story as to why things arrived in a certain space. So I'm very much concerned with giving people almost like the universe, or on some level of what that thing may be. And then on a more practical level, anytime I'm inspired by something, I tend to keep like loads of files on things, like
you're
YouTube
good at
files.
archiving things.
Yeah, I'll archive a lot. So when it comes to thinking about new projects, whatever, I can go through things that have just, you know, piqued my interest. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It was cool you were talking about digging and music, because we're going to move on to your music video work and start with Hub Tones by Kamasi Washington. And so the concept for this is 3 women standing in front of the Pan-African flag, kind of like dancing. What can you like talk us through that?
It's quite loaded.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. There's an ode in there to Amiri Baraka with the call to nation time. There's a flag, which is called the New Pan-African Flag for the Relic Travelers Alliance by a British Ghanaian artist by the name of Larry Achiampong. There's Kamasi Washington making a track called Hub Tones, which is a cover of a Freddie Hubbard track called Hub Tones that came out in the 60s. And then I kind of came into the space wanting to, thinking about what would the visualization of transcendence feel like. So I'm of Nigerian heritage, and where I'm from in Nigeria, we're from a tribe called the Curator tribe, and there's this ceremony called a boni, and the idea is through rhythm and the changing of tones and dance to channel spirit and transcend. And so I was thinking about what would a visual embodiment, how could I capture that visually? So the full music video itself is about almost 10 minutes, actually.
Wow.
It's very much that, you know, like, what is it to be in that spirit space? And I struggle to almost describe it. It's easier to watch and experience. And so, yeah, that's, yeah.
Like transcendence through repetition.
Through repetition, yeah.
Okay, and then we're going to play Kong by Nena Cherry.
So these are all teasers for the music videos.
I really like that video. What basically everyone you seem to collaborate with seems to be musicians I love. How do you how do you pick your collaborators, or is it just organic? Like, how does it happen?
I mean, for me, I'm very much, because I love music myself, and I'm very particular in terms of like my taste in music, multi-genre, of course, but I very much like the music that I like, you know. So I actually turned down about 90% of tracks that are sent my way, if I'm being honest. And music videos, I just love them as a space of expression, you know. So in terms of thinking about like who do I choose, it's also, to be honest, it's more so the track. So I've turned down music videos from like A-list musicians that we all know. So I very much, you know, oftentimes, especially because it's in the commercial space, people be like, oh, there's this track, there's this person, and you have this amount of money, and you can go here and you can shoot. I'm like, stop, send me the music first. Let the music dictate if this is going to happen or not, because quite honestly, if the music is not speaking to me, I can't see the visuals anyway. So that's kind of my process in terms of that. And was really fortunate, like, you know, last year to really work with incredible musicians and people that I admire, you know. And yeah, Jenn Nkiru has been an icon of mine since I was a kid. So to work with her was like, I was just like, you know, I just wanted to, and this was like her first album, like in a long time, you know, first like intentional album or release of music in a long time. And so I was also thinking about like, as a woman, like what is it to have your sensuality? What is it like to be 360, you know, three-dimensional woman? What does that look like over 50, you know? Because oftentimes in mainstream culture, what you tend to see women under the age of like, I don't know, 20-something, right? But this is a woman who's iconic, beautiful, like brilliant. And I just wanted to create something that really just she was happy with and I was happy with. And the track itself is speaking to the experience of immigration and what it means to leave where you're from and to come to new lands, and what does that experience feel like. So we were really trying to capture a particular time in London as well with the piece. And so we ended up with Kong, yeah.
I love it. I've done like a cheeky thing, and I was like looking through some of our emails and saw a question that you actually asked Janelle Monáe when she came on your radio show like 10 years ago, which I now want to ask you.
Oh my goodness.
Which is, where is it? Here we go.
Oh my God, you asked like 10, something I was
actually
going to
lost
ask
it.
her 10 years ago.
Yeah. Oh wait, here it is. If you could create a band, it's quite a fun question, which I feel like tonight. You could create a band of musicians, dead or alive.
Oh, shucks.
Who would be in it?
Dang, that's hard, yo. Oh my goodness.
Like Sun Ra?
I feel like it would have to be like an orchestra, because I don't think I could,
like 20
yeah, like
20 person
people.
strong.
I put Pharaoh Sanders in there. I'd put Jimi Hendrix in there. Oh my goodness, this is so hard. This is hard, yo.
Well, you asked her.
I know.
It's only fair.
It's like 10 years later, gotcha.
This is the problem with archiving everything.
I know. The chickens come home to roost. Amar.
Surely you got to put Dilla in there.
I would, but there's just so many people I'm thinking
There's
about.
like tons.
There's tons. Jay Dilla would definitely be in there.
I had Sister Rosetta Tharpe written down. That could be cool.
Mm-hmm. You guys want me to keep going?
I don't know. We can stop that.
Okay.
What else? Okay, one final question on music. This is a bit of a deep one. Like, what do you think the role of music is for us, like, as individuals and society?
I think like the role with music as is the same with art, is to reflect society. Maybe let me take a step back. To be able to, such a lofty question.
Sorry.
I think for me, maybe let me answer it on a more personal level. It's just another channel, another means of like expressing emotion, you know? Like it allows us to connect in a way that we can't, like, through just any other means. It's such a it's the kind of classic, you know, it's a universal language, you know? It allows us to feel. It also, for me, it allows me to access aspects and parts of my mind that I wouldn't otherwise be able to access. It's a healer. I think music is a healer, for me at least.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So next, we're gonna talk about 4/3. Can we play a clip? So yeah, a year ago, this actually feels really old now, because like a year ago, we launched, at Boiler Room, we launched 4/3, which is a new platform, like an online video hub, kind of mixing together a lot of different types of video, from feature stuff down to shorts, art films, music videos, loads of different types of video, and putting them in dialogue with each other. And so I was kind of building this platform and wanted to launch it with some curators, and it kind of turned into an exercise in building like my dream lineup for a dinner party or something. So we had like, I was interested in crossover people, like people who had kind of operated between art, film, fashion, music, because that was kind of my idea for the platform. So like Sakamoto is a really good example of someone who's a musician, Yellow Magic Orchestra, and has done a lot of film scoring. Elijah Wood, who's kind of like become a friend, acquaintance of mine, is like loves like digging for records like around the world, and it's like an open secret that he's a crate digger. Peaches obviously like blurs a lot of lines, and I'd watched Rebirth is Necessary last year and was like, Jenn is perfect for this. So that's how we met, and yeah, you came on as a curator, and I remember you curated some films around the LA Rebellion for launch, which are actually still on 4/3, so it's a film by Charles Burnett and Zinabu Davis. And then, so that was the launch, and that was about a year ago. And then we worked on a project together called Afro Frequency. And that was like a season that existed online. It still exists online. Has like an online photography gallery of the photos of Ming Smith, which are beautiful and have like James Baldwin and Sun Ra and all these like skies over Harlem and all this kind of amazing stuff. And then we screened films like The Last Angel of History by John Aconfra, Welcome to the Terror Dome, which I had like a sort of like content or like little kind of series that you did called Call and Response, where you phoned up Sampha and Tina Camp and kind of had these 1 minute like conversations with them on the telephone, where you asked a question, that was the call, and then there was a response, and they're really nice. And then we did this event, which I'm gonna play. The first thing, we play the like video teaser for it, so you can kind of see what it was like, and then we're gonna show a clip from the event. That seemed to end abruptly, but you get the picture. So that was, I can't believe we pulled that event off.
I know.
It's kind of insane. There was like 900 people in this huge amphitheater.
And there's like 1,500 people in the line.
Yeah, it was like a queue all the way up.
Yeah, that's insane.
The road. Yeah, I wanted to ask you what your memories of that night are like, because it was a really special night for me.
Yeah, it was
like,
incredible.
It was probably the best event I've been involved with, I think. No, I mean, it was amazing. It was like, so as you kind of see in that thing, we had like, the night opened with a film screening of Dirty Computer by Janelle Monáe, her like emotion picture, I think she calls it. And then there was poetry and a harp playing by Belinda Zwahi, which is very beautiful. And then yourself and Janelle had a kind of conversation that was punctuated by quotes. So there were like quotes that Jenn had picked, and music and images, and just like the whole atmosphere was amazing. And then
people came into Alice Coltrane as well. Remember, we played Alice Coltrane. Basically, remember we had Alice Coltrane playing when people we were running around, but like
that was the her like ashram music. So what we've got, we're gonna play a clip from that night.
I still haven't watched it.
You haven't watched the?
No, I didn't watch myself back.
Like watching like talks.
Yeah.
This is being filmed actually. You can avoid this one as well. Okay, well, you can put your fingers in your ears.
What is freedom to you?
And some of the, freedom was like a big theme that night, I felt like, and kind of rituals of resistance was another really interesting topic. It felt like a really empowering evening.
It was beautiful. I think I always talk about how do we put medicine in ice cream type of a thing. And so I kind of didn't tell anyone it was going to basically be like a lecture or something. So like I wanted people to get like lots of learning.
There was a lot of learning.
Yeah. I think even Janelle was like lots of learnings from it. But yeah, so and she's incredible and so gracious and generous, and she came and she was with us for like almost 2 hours? Almost 2 hours we were doing this thing.
My favourite bit is her, which actually I've got a clip of, but it's on the internet, of her dancing with the sunflower.
Yeah, and that's her favourite. That was her favourite flower.
Which is also the
flower of her state. Yeah.
Exactly.
That was beautiful.
Okay, let's talk about Black to Techno, which is your film. It was commissioned by Gucci and Frieze, and it's screened yesterday. I might be screening again. I'm not sure.
I think so.
At Sheffield. Did anyone see it? Yeah.
Show of hands, because I was. Yay! Hey, Simran.
Okay. We'll play a clip for people who haven't seen it. And this has kind of been screening at gallery. It's at the you screened at the Whitney Biennale.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm a part of the Whitney Biennial this year, and it's the piece that I've contributed to the show. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess is it fair to say that it's a film about reclamation and like tracing? I mean, if you're into electronic music, you'll know that like techno was birthed in Detroit by the Belleville Three.
Yeah, and people will argue that a lot. I
Do
think,
they?
Yeah, and that's a funny thing, because I was literally in Detroit maybe a week and a half ago. We were screening the film there, and it's very much, we were having this conversation about ideas around erasure, the idea that, techno is as black as like jazz and hip hop is black, like these kids were in the basements of their grandmother's houses, like creating this sound. Like techno is a sound from Detroit, but people will dispute that. And on some level, like you mentioned, like I was on a journey of reclamation of it on that level. But also I've described, even when pitching the piece, I described techno as a resulting sound. Like it's a result of the geopolitical time. It's a result of American history. It's a result of Detroit. And it's a result of, it being the Fordist, like, heartland of, like, America, basically. It didn't just, the mothership didn't just land on Detroit with techno. Like, it's a result of all these things. And so the film kind of goes some way towards exploring techno on that level. So it's more so like the spirit and the energy and the feeling and the vibrancy of techno, as opposed to giving you a regular techno was invented in 1980. It's not that type of a film. And I got to show it to the guys at Submerge and the guys from Underground Resistance, like namely Mike Banks.
Mike
yeah,
Banks.
And Mike.
Is he in the film? Or
No, he
does
refused
he have VO
to be
in the film?
No. What it is we have a Detroit Afrofuturist called Onyx Ashanti, and he tells this anecdote of Mike Banks's grandfather, because the film also explores ideas of how machines can have the idea that machine can have a soul, and he kind of explains this. He talks about this anecdote about how, like, what it is or what it means to be in sync with the machine. And Mike Banks's grandfather was working on a car plant, and essentially he worked with a machine that he named Ginny. And so this machine will come down and like stamp out parts. And one day his grandfather's hand got stuck in this machine, and that was the one time the machine never came down. And so he talks about this is what it means to be in sync with the machine and to feel the spirit of the machine. And so we go through the film very much on that level, like exploring it on a more so visceral, spiritual level. And yeah, it's a film Detroit's really proud of. We had like 800 people come out in Detroit
Amazing.
to like see the film. And Mike said to me, he said if he had seen the film when he was a kid, he would have started making music 10 years earlier. So for Mike Banks to say that, I was like, whoa.
It's high praise.
Yeah, and he said to me, he was like, you've awoken a sleeping giant. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He very much, he really connected with it. And he actually brought his granddaughter to the screening. And he said to me like how his granddaughter was like, oh, so that's what you and your friends do. So like she finally got
got
the
it. It like
context,
clicked.
yeah.
It was like, right.
She's like, oh, that's Uncle Mike and Uncle John and Uncle, yeah. So yeah,
It's like when your parent finally approves of something you do.
Exactly.
Actually, the granddaughter thing is interesting because it's the first film about techno that I've seen. I mean, also the way that the form is really interesting, but it's the first film that actually seems to give a voice to women, especially. Yeah, I mean, the scene of, I think it's in that teaser of the three female DJs kind of wearing like factory goggles and like DJing in a factory.
That's a live factory, by the way.
Was it live?
Yeah, that's not like, it's, I mean, obviously they're set up there, but everything else is live. Like, it's Detroit. People work, man. And people work with their hands. And these guys saw us and they were just like, okay, like, we've got steel to cut, and they carry on like literally cutting steels behind them. But like, yeah, that's something as well, like thinking about again how women are kind of omitted from that story, and so trying to on some level, and sometimes people say like, oh, you're trying to like, you're telling a woman's story. And I'm like, actually, no, I'm just telling the story in earnest.
Yeah.
The story is there were women involved. The story is there were, like, for example, one piece that, in my director's cut that's included, but it's not in this piece is like looking at even the queer roots of techno. No one really talks about that. And so I include that in the film too. And so, yeah, again, even with that scene, wanted to have an intergenerational conversation. So you have 3 generations of Detroit women techno DJs. You have DJ Minx, DJ Hieroglyphics, and Stacey Hot Wax Hell, who's known as like the godmother of like house and techno as a DJ. And you have them spinning together to Cybertron Clear. So
yeah, the music throughout is really good.
Thanks, yeah.
I've noticed that America, like the USA, is like a running theme, I guess. Like obviously we've watched On Vogue. I mean, you went to Howard University. You have US collaborators. This is the film about Detroit techno. Why are you so drawn to like, I guess, Black American subcultures? And also, is there a British subculture that you would make a film about?
Yeah, because they're the ones that offer me work.
It's just functional.
Simple. I always say that, like, I'm in the Whitney Biennial before any of my work has been asked to be in any gallery here. MoMA just picked this piece up and is going to add it to its permanent collection before anyone in the UK has asked me. So quite frankly, I'm just going where people are responsive to my work, I spent many years asking for funding and not winning a single grant. And so I said, well, maybe the only way I can do this is to start writing ideas and then pitching them, in a commercial format. And that's where people responded to me. I always say I just go where people are responding to me. I would love to make something. I'm from UK, I'm from Peckham, South London. Like, I'd love to make something on that, and I will, I'm sure, at some point, but I'm going to have to build that myself because no one's actually saying, hey, here's some money, go and do that. America is, Gucci, Italy is, but the UK necessarily isn't, so that's the long and short of it, quite frankly. But yeah, I would love to make something that's, UK focus. I've always wanted to do that, particularly when thinking about the Black experience in the United Kingdom is one that on the level that and the attention that it needs to be paid hasn't, for me at least, been done in a way that I would love to see yet. So I'm thinking about that and eager to do that somehow. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop being selfish and let other people ask questions. Anais.
I was interested as to why in your film Black to Techno you decided not to include any faces of the interviewees, and what was the process?
Yeah, for this one, like we have like so many different people, some more well-known voices and some unknown voices, and I really wanted the focus to stay on Detroit and the people and the sound without people kind of getting, I don't know, carried away with like, oh, here's X person. And also just thinking about different ways or thinking expansively about what documentary can be as well. So I very much think of film as a sound and vision medium. So even when I edit without any commentary, any voiceover, with the aim of trying to being able to tell the story just with the images alone, and then when necessary, then dropping in the voiceover. So even when we were editing this, we had like several passes where there were no like voiceovers at all, and we were like, okay, like let's watch this and see if we can get a sense of what this piece is without the voices. And then we added the voices on top. So really it's about, again, it's this kind of idea of interrogation as well. Like, how do we interrogate this thing to the extent that it is only what is necessary that's being included? And also, how do we create a space that allows the music and the people to be at the forefront rather than thinking about like celebrity or like well-known names? It's for you to catch that if you want to catch it. I didn't even put like lower thirds. I waited to the end of the film, and then you see everyone's name. Then you're like, oh, that was X person, that person.
And it feels like you're flicking between TV channels.
It's just for you to become more immersed and not become so. I don't know. I'm always thinking about how do I eliminate distraction, and focus on the work. So on many levels. So yeah, that was one of the kind of approaches as to why I did that. You're welcome.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about your relationship with Detroit?
Mm-hmm.
When you first went there, how has it changed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I was at Howard, a lot of my homeboys were from the Midwest just by chance, and we were all into music. So like some were from Chicago, some were from Detroit. I was from London, so I put them on garage, like two-step garage. I put them on grime. I put them on jungle, and they put me on house. They put me on like ghetto tech and techno. And then one day, one of my homeboys was like, "Yo, let's like take a road trip and go to Detroit," because he's from Detroit. So we jump in the car and we drive from DC to Detroit. And it's Memorial Day weekend, which also is in Detroit, the Detroit Electro Music Festival, which is a techno festival called DEMF, Detroit Electro Music Festival, yeah, DEMF. And his parents had him like really young when they were like 15. So his parents were like only 15 years older than us. And so like we went, yeah, it sounds like what? So like we went like, so we turned up in Detroit, we stayed at his granddad's house, and we went to his dad's house, and like his dad showed me all these like old techno records. And then with his wife, they started showing me like the Detroit Jet and like all the dances like associated with it. And then we went to the techno festival, and I saw like Juan Atkins and all these like some of the guys from UR just like spinning like. And that's when I kind of like began to like really kind of like have this sense of like beyond like even Berlin techno, like what different sounds. And also like we ended up watching like old school like local public access
like
TV
new
shows,
dance show.
like the new dance show. So his parents showed me that.
So,
he showed me that.
If you haven't seen it, you
It's
should watch
amazing.
it. It's so good.
It's like basically a local Detroit version of like Soul Train, and like they're on it like dancing to like early Detroit like techno
Like
music.
Cybertron and stuff.
Cybertron, yeah, and also Kraftwerk.
And Kraftwerk, yeah. And they're throwing like crazy shapes.
Yeah.
Like crazy shapes.
It's so dope. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
So yeah, having kind of like that kind of like long weekend of an experience of like doing all these things, and then when Gucci and Frieze came back around through Jackie Edenbrow, who were talking about looking at the second summer of love, and they had said, hey, would you be interested in techno? I was like, okay, cool. Like, I would want to look at the roots of techno, specifically Detroit techno. And so I kind of, that as my kind of like foundation, kind of went on a long research quest to knowing more. So, yeah. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions?
I think I saw on the credits the Black Techno Coda Washington's name.
Yes, yes.
Say a bit about him and his work, especially More Brilliant Than the Sun.
Yes.
Blew my mind away when I read that.
Yeah, oh God.
Saw me on Sonic Music, film and thought.
Yeah, his mind is something else. Like, he's insane. So Kudwa Eshen is for those who don't know, he is a academic, but also just a thinker, and he wrote a book, More Brilliant Than the Sun, as well, where he speaks about techno, and he speaks about ideas of like linking it to Afrofuturism, and then also ideas of Afro-accelerationism as well. So where Afrofuturism is more so looking at ideas in a distant future, Afro-accelerationism is more so looking at how do we get to where we want to get to tomorrow, for example. And so even just making this piece, like, I was very conscious of knowing that I wanted to include academics, I wanted to include musicians, but I also wanted to include like real people on the ground in Detroit too. So that it kind of felt like, on some level, this anthropological archive of this sound on multiple levels. So Kudwo and I had like a long conversation, and I mean, it was like, between he and I, it's like quite dangerous. Because you end up going. But yeah. I don't know if that answered your question though. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, a big note to Sheffield, actually.
Yes. It's so funny because we had someone from Sheffield in Detroit as well come out to the screening, and this random guy who was just like, yeah, like, we gotta bring this to Sheffield. I was like, okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there'll definitely be an audience
yeah,
right here.
for sure. Yeah.
Anyone else?
In Black to Techno, there's this connection that's made between black bodies and how they interact with machines, and the origins of techno, which is a genre that relies on machines, which, if you know the history of Detroit being a manufacturing town, which is actually quite obvious, but I'd never thought about that before. So I wondered, was that obvious, and how did you go about sort of constructing that argument in the imagery? Because I thought it was a really like elegant link that was made between the two.
Yeah, it was something I was always aware of. So always thinking about the idea that if people are spending so many hours in this space, or so many people in this region are spending so many hours in these factory spaces, and there's certain rhythmical gestures that are coming out of all these things, they are going to find a way into the music. And this is again why I was talking about techno as a resulting sound rather than, one that just kind of appears. It's because of all these things. So even when we were shooting, I went round with a location sound recorder and went to factories and just captured sounds in the factory.
Like field recordings.
Field recordings, exactly. And then we included those in the film. But then also topically, an area that I was very interested in exploring within the film is ideas of mimesis. And so the film starts off trying to make the link of mimesis. So what I mean by that is mimicry, in a sense. So the film starts off with you see black folk working as sharecroppers, and they're basically moving in rhythm to a Mike Banks track as well, and then it kind of like immediately goes over to automation, and we have that exploration there. And so I was thinking about like how, when people are working, like even when you think about chain gangs, there's a certain rhythm to the work, and there's certain music or rounds even that are, kind of repeated. So really thinking about all those things, but rather than explaining it, again, thinking about alternative ways of getting information across. So just showing it in the actual film itself, and kind of allowing the audience to go on a journey with me, you know, meet me in the middle, as opposed to, I think oftentimes people feel they have to offload like all this information and give you A through to Z, but I like to believe audiences are intelligent, and we can meet each other midway, and have an experience together. So yeah, in terms of the film and going into it, I was doing a lot of research on like mimesis, and I kind of called it, I think, even techno mimesis, you know. So yeah. Hi.
Your Beyonce and Jay-Z video,
Mhm.
I use it to introduce a lecture on art and post-colonialism,
Mhm.
and it really sparked an excellent conversation every time about the reasons, you know, why is Beyonce moved.
Mhm.
But could you explain the story a little bit more about what kind of, you know, the ideas to conceive the project?
I am so NDA'd off about that project. NDA'd meaning non-disclosure agreement. I'm not really allowed to talk about it, unfortunately. Yeah.
But do you have any ideas about, you know, the kind of the subtext for you, for putting that piece of work together? Not necessarily about.
What can I say? I'm trying to rack my. I'm just trying to see if I can. I mean, we're recording. I'm trying to give you something that I know I'm allowed to give. You know, we can talk later. You're welcome.
One more? Is there one more?
Going once, going twice.
Gone. Okay. Please could you give Jenn a massive round of applause?